Aquaman is the new fish in the busy superhero movie aquarium, and it's making some serious waves, proving to be a mega box office tsunami. Okay, we promised to stop with the fish jokes and puns. Aquaman is a super fun film, and not only it's the most successful DCEU film ever, but while the film was enjoyable, it has some major issues. Our main issue with the film is how Aquaman becomes the King of Atlantis, and in this video, we will try to fix it and present a better way. So let's take a deep dive into Aquaman, and let's fix it. Aquaman has proven to be a huge surprise in 2018. Not only the film is a massive box office success, it's actually the most successful DCEU film ever. And we can't lie, Aquaman is a pretty fun film. It might not be the best film ever, but we don't actually think the movie even tried to take itself too seriously, like some of the previous DCEU films. The action in this film is very well done, with long tracking shots that really makes the fights and battles feel unique and cool. Of course, the underwater world of Atlantis looks mesmerizing, and you can really tell that James Wan tried to make a Star Wars film underwater, and he didn't disappoint. Our main issue with the film, and the reason for making this video, is about how Arthur Curry becomes the King of Atlantis. When you look at the plot of the film, it's pretty basic. The movie is about Arthur going on a journey with the beautiful Zebel princess, Mira. The two embark on an adventure around the world, with some terrible pitbull beats to find the long-lost trident of King Atlan. By finding this magical MacGuffin, Arthur will be able to stop his half-brother Orm, and in the process become the new King of Atlantis. But this is our main issue with Aquaman. Our problem is that at no point in the film is there even a hint that Arthur actually earned the right to be king. While the film is somewhat based on the New 52 version of Aquaman in the comics, the character itself is very different from most comic book versions of Aquaman. In a way, we will say that Aquaman in the comics feels a lot more like T'Challa in Black Panther than what we got from Jason Momoa. Now that's not a bad thing after all. It's hard not to love Jason Momoa. But we do have issues with the development of the character. If we compare the Aquaman film to Black Panther, Arthur appears to be less of a T'Challa and more like Eric Killmonger. Think of it, they are both half royal and part of a magical kingdom, but spent most of their lives outside of said kingdom, only to return in an opportune time to challenge the king and be crowned as a king against the people's wishes, with only a small incursion supporting them. When you look at things from this point of view, you might actually think that Aquaman is acutely the villain of the story. In the film, Aquaman never really interacts with any Atlanteans other than Mira, Vulko, Orm, and his mother Atlanta. Come to think of it, we barely know anything about the people of Atlantis and the other kingdoms. They see a half-human and the son of an ex-princess who was exiled. Shows up out of nowhere on Atlantis, challenges their king to a duel only to lose it and escape. Then that same half-human shows up again during a civil war, riding a mythical monster that probably killed many people during the battle. Not to mention that half-human invader brings with him the Trench, who eat people, by the way. That half-human then fights Orm again, beats him in battle, and suddenly he is crowned king. Why would the people of Atlantis be okay with such a king, who appears to be less of a savior and more like a conquering invader? Arthur has zero experience as a leader. Are the people of Atlantis expected to accept him as king simply because he found Atlan's trident? Sure, him being able to take the trident does make him worthy to wield it, but does that make him worthy to be king? How do we even know Atlan was a good king? He was the king during the time that Atlantis sunk underwater after all, so who's he to decide who is worthy to be king? And sure, Arthur becomes king because he has defeated Orm in battle, which by Atlantean tradition makes him king. But is being better at fighting means you are a good leader? Okay, we admit we might be taking all of this way too seriously, but we are passionate about it. Just because the film refuses to take itself seriously, it's not an excuse to compromise the story. And so, with all of this being said, we will now offer our fix to this issue and give our version of events to how Arthur should have become the King of Atlantis. The first thing we would fix is Arthur as a character. The film should have focused more on characteristics that set him up as a leader and king. Sure, the movie was kinda handcuffed to the version that was presented in Justice League, but considering the story of this film, some adjustments to the character should have been made. We do wish Aquaman was a bit more like he was in the Justice League animated show in the early 2000s, but we will try to work with the version that we got in the film. One thing that makes Arthur a better king is the fact that he is half human and half Atlantean. This allows him to be more objective. He isn't as extreme as his brother. He was raised on the surface, and he has lived among humans all his life. He knows that humans are not perfect, and while humanity does pollute the oceans, they are not all bad. And so it's possible that his human side is what makes him a better king, as opposed to Orm, who is far more extreme in his ideals. Okay, now we will do something a bit controversial that will cause you to go a bit crazy, but it's for good reasons. We have to cut Black Manta from the film. Hold your seahorses, don't dislike the video and jump to the comments to call us bad names just yet. We have a good reason for that. Black Manta is a great character, and one of the best DC villains for sure. And we think that he was set up really well in this film, but unfortunately we can't help but feel like he was shoehorned into the film. And at times it feels like he is an afterthought. Black Manta deserves better, and we think he should have been kept for the sequel, where the film can give him more time to shine. This way, the first film can focus more on Orm as the main villain, and not have Black Manta just show up here and there and not really have a major impact on the film. And so, we think that the sub-scene should have played out without Black Manta. Instead, it would have been interesting to see Orm and some Atlantean soldiers come to blows with the humans on the sub. Arthur shows up while tensions run wild, and he of course takes the human side. This could lead into a few interesting plot points in the film. Our idea is that a fight breaks between Arthur, the humans on the sub, and the Atlanteans, and one thing leads to another, and the sub ends causing the death of many Atlanteans. This would cause Orm to declare war on the surface world, with good reason. The film can set up how unhappy Orm is with what mankind is doing to the oceans, and the impact it has on sea life and of course his kingdom. And this latest attack is what throws him over the edge, and will flesh Orm's character more, making him a bit more sympathetic. Following the sub-incident, Arthur feels guilty. His whole life he went with the approach of punch first, drink later, but now he understands that he isn't dealing with some human pirates, but with forces that could destroy the world, and he needs to use his brain a bit more. After that, Arthur and Mira will embark on their journey, but instead of it being about finding a magical trident, it will be about Arthur's journey to become a king. We saw in the film that not everyone was on Orm's side. Some of the other kingdoms rejected him and refused to go to war with the surface world. It will be interesting to see a civil war brewing between the 7 kingdoms, with the more extreme ones supporting Orm, while the ones who want peace end up siding with Arthur and Mira. In a way, the film will be about Arthur's campaign against Orm, as he recruits allies to support his peaceful cause. And while he does that, he will showcase more of his leadership qualities. With Mira by his side, Arthur will slowly come into his own, finding his true calling for the first time in his life. The film can still be a fun adventure. We're not saying it should have been a boring political drama. We just prefer an underwater adventure between the different kingdoms. The movie barely scratches the surface when it comes to the underwater world, which is a shame considering the fact that Aquaman is really our only chance to experience this new world. It's not like a Batman movie will explore Atlantis, right? We think it will be interesting to focus on how lonely Arthur was among humans, who, other than his father, all saw him as some freak, and he felt like an outsider. But with Mira and the other Atlanteans, Arthur finally feels like he belongs, that he is home, and that motivates him to fight and protect Atlantis, his new home and his people. This way, by the time we get to the big battle and the climax, Arthur doesn't just show up in the middle of all the CGI mess. Instead, he leads his own army against Orm's. And when the two brothers clash, the people of Atlantis will actually have a stake in the winner. It won't be some stranger facing their king. Instead, it will be a battle that represents different ideologies of the people of Atlantis. And so, when Arthur becomes king, it won't feel out of the blue for the Atlanteans. Arthur won't be presented as some conqueror from the surface world. At the same time, it will show that Arthur actually wants to be king, and he isn't just going to run off to drink some beer after the battle. Sure, this version of the film can still have the magical trident and have Atlanta returns, that all can still come into play, but the main thing is to focus on Aquaman's development from a reluctant hero to a king. But of course, the film is still fun as is, and the fact that it's making so much money is a clear indication that fans are enjoying this film. But what do you think about our fix? Do you like it, or you think the film should have stayed as is? Let us know in the comments below, and we will appreciate if you hit that like button and subscribe for more great videos. See you next time, and thanks for watching.